And welcome everyone from the interwebs, all you history students out there on YouTube. Welcome to Mr. Lance Flipped US History Class video series, video number 1. The title of this video is called European Exploration of the New World. So I want to say welcome to everybody, no matter if you're in my class or not. During the video lesson, we are going to be digging for some answers. You're here to learn. You're here to get some histories on. So when we do this processing, this thinking skills, we have to do some things really well. First thing is that we really have to listen well. So my narration is just a guide. So you want to listen to what I'm saying well. And now if you don't get that information, you can rewind. You can pause the video. You can do some thinking, do some writing, do some drawing on your paperwork, get those answers down, especially if you're in my class. Also, check those questions on your sheet, your Cornell notes on the screen. There's going to look a lot like that. And so you can always rewind and pause me to get that information down. So we want to be thinking as we're watching. We just don't want to be hitting that play button and letting me talk randomly, just going on and on and on. You got to be a part of this lesson. So we're going to dive in with the first part of our video, which is the vocabulary from the lesson. Some high point words here that I'm going to use. I'm going to pronounce them for you. You're going to write those down right now. Number 1, colonization. Number 2, pull factors. Number 3, West Indies. Number 4, economics. Number 5, political. 6, furs and pelts. And 7, Christianity. Now at this point you can pause the video, get those words, you can rewind to hear me pronounce those words again, and I'm going to move on when you're coming on back. You hit that pause button, now you're back. So let's move forward. At the onset of the video, we've got to ask some questions, some basic knowledge questions that we can learn about this video. Number 1 question here is, what are the reasons or the pull factors that brought European explorers and European nations to explore and colonize the New World? So pull factors means that these are factors that brought them over. Another question I might get into a lot here today is, can we actually describe the influences of some of these nations? And I think we can. And by the end of this video, you're going to be able to recognize those pull factors and see those influences from those nations. So let's start the story. Here we go, YouTubers. Take a look at this picture here, right here. Pause it, really take it in. Okay, you've had some time to look at it. Now on your sheet, I want you to write down 3 observations that you see in this famous image, this famous painting. And then I want you to make 1 conclusion. I want you to write down 1 conclusion from your observations. And last but not least, I want you to come up with 1 piece of evidence that supports your conclusion. For example, I see a gentleman holding a flag. That flag looks like it belongs to a country. So my conclusion is they are obviously trying to gain land. How do I know this? Because they're holding that flag and planting it. That's an example of that conclusion and evidence. Now, as we move forward, let's really dive into the story. Now, if you got your thinking cap on, you're probably thinking, hey, that looks a lot like Christopher Columbus. And it is the famous painting of Columbus landing in the New World. But before we get into Columbus, let's go back a little bit here. Meet Marco Polo. Now, Marco Polo has a quote for you there, and I want you to pause and read that real quick. Okay, you read it. Now, what is Marco Polo really after? Well, he's looking for resources and riches. Now, the story of Marco Polo is very famous. Now, why do we begin with him? Is because his explorations to Asia actually opened the door to Columbus and other explorers coming to the New World. So those spices and silks that he's talking about are definitely motivating him to travel from Europe on the map to Asia in the East. So these explorers wanted to bring those resources from Asia over to their homelands in Europe so that they could, of course, and you see that dollar sign, they wanted that fast route to make that money. They were interested in the riches and resources that the East had to provide Asia. Now, I use spices and silks as 2 of the most famous examples, but there are many more. Now, Marco Polo's travels were very famous that eventually got put into a book, and Columbus was influenced by Marco Polo in the early centuries. So this brings us straight to Columbus. In 1492, we know that Columbus led a journey to where he thought he was going, which was India, where Marco Polo had some of his travels. So when Columbus lands, he thinks he's in India. But we know that that's not true. He started to call the Native Americans who lived there Indians, which is not a term we want to use anymore. Now, this was not the Asia he was looking for. He thought he was in a place that he called the West Indies. Indies, get it? Because he thought he was in India. Now, when we look at the map, we know that Columbus was sailing out of Spain. And so he leaves Spain, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. He ends up making 4 voyages, that first one having those 3 famous ships, the fourth one, which was lost. And he lands here. This is the Bahamas, or the islands of the Bahamas. Now, there's been some debate about where he landed, and there's some controversy there. We'll talk about that in class. But he calls that the West Indies. So this opens the door for the big 3 to come into the New World. Now, I call them the big 3 because they are the biggest European countries. Now, the Americas are going to be north and south. This is going to become their playground, their new discovery, their new world, where they're going to want to spread and create their new empires for their new government. So this continent of Europe, here's a picture of Europe. All right. Now the big 3 are those 3 there. We have England, France, and Spain. We're going to focus on those 3, although other countries were coming over to the Americas in the New World. This is the Old World. So the Old World Europeans were leaving to come to the New World of the Americas. We're going to focus on these 3. So look, those are the flags, by the way. You don't have to memorize that, but I thought that was a great graphic so you could recognize them. I have to ask the question there. When we look at that map, we see how the big 3 divided up North America, which is where we have our country, where we live now. I have to ask the question about why, what were the reasons? What were the pull factors? What was bringing them, the Europeans from the Old World, to the Americas in the New World? So let's talk about these big 3 and the big reasons that were pulling them over to the New World. So they were exploring, meaning they were finding this new world, and they were colonizing. So to colonize means that they wanted to make a settlement, like their own communities, their own little cities, so they could grow from there. Now, there are 3 arrows for 3 big reasons that we're going to go over in class. First reason here, European merchants wanted to make profits from the products that they found in Asia. So this led them to search for more riches, particularly the metals gold and silver, because those were your hardcore riches. Spices and silks were great, but if you had the metals of gold and silver, you were banging some buck. So we're going to call this the wealth motivation, the economics. The economics meaning the money. Now, the second reason that we'll look at, when you see the picture there, Europeans were eager to spread Christianity and to stop the spread of the Muslim religion. Now, Christianity can be many religions. For example, Catholics are Christians. Christians are Christians. Protestants, Anglicans, they are also Christian. They wanted to spread the word of God into a new world. We're going to call this the religion motivation. And the third big reason, they're going to bring a lot of fame and power by adding new territory to their nation. This is going to increase their empire meaning their government, their land. We're going to call this the empire / political because it's a government, territory motivation. Now, if you remember from some of your earlier lessons in other grades, you probably remember the 3 G's, the gold, God, and the glory. Now, you have to know that the gold, God, and glory is described in more in more distinct terms. So gold, God, and glory is great, but we have to know wealth, economics, empire, political, religion. And there are your big 3 pull factors, the reasons that those European countries were coming to the New World. Now, let's dive into each one of those big 3 countries. Let's start with Spain. Here's a map of the Americas in the New World. Now, that red marking is where Spain tended to acquire their land, their empire. Notice how they took so much of South America as well. Now, in North America, though, we're going to focus just on North America for our purposes. Spain had control of a state that we will know as Florida. A lot of history students don't know that Florida was under the control of Spain for many years, even when the American government and American country had already started to flourish. Spain still controlled Florida. And We also know that Spain brought with them a very distinct religious style. If you look at this picture right here, you recognize that from some of your Texas history lessons. That looks like the Alamo. They brought with them Spanish priests to spread their religion, to bring their missions where they could pray and spread Catholicism. Now they are Christian religion, but Spanish priests were Catholic. Now their wealth motivation, Spain was very heavily influenced and obsessed by finding gold. We hear about Hernan Cortez and Cabeza de Vaca searching for the metal that would make them powerful and rich. So territory, Florida, religion is Catholicism and Christian, and Spanish wealth was very focused on gold. And those are your Spanish influences right there, which we still see in our home today because we live in a town called Mission, Texas. Mission, Texas is influenced by Spain. Now let's switch gears and go over to the French side of the influences on the New World. Now looking at this map, you can see that France, the blue section there, this is New France, controls a lot of the Middle Americas and even into Canada. So when we look at the French influences, the French explorers really took control of Middle America. Louisiana was a state that they had heavily influence on. They controlled something that was very important to transportation, the Mississippi River. That river is mightily important, and France controlled it for a long portion of their time in the New World. We also know that their religion was Christian. They had Catholicism, but we don't really see too heavily influences of that in our territory right now, as much as we do say the Spanish. But I do want to focus on their wealth. Now, French explorers were heavily influenced in wealth, but in a total different way. Sure, they wanted gold, absolutely, but they were smart because they started to become friendly. Look at that bullet that I put there. French were friendly with Native Americans. Now, the reason they were friendly was because the natives could learn and teach them to trade their skills out in the wilderness, and they could get large amounts of money from the Native Americans by hunting and trading for these. Do you recognize those? Those are animal furs, animal pelts. Those they could sell to keep warm and to make money from, which was something they found very valuable. Now, the English, let's switch gears a little bit here. Now, the English are definitely going to be a focus for our next video lessons. The English produced the 13 colonies of America, which is on the east coast of the Atlantic Ocean. So this is going to become our future America. So the English territory is definitely going to be important to our history. Their religion, we'll get back to that. That's a tricky one. So we're going to skip that for now. But let's look at how the English made money. So they made money by controlling those 13 colonies you see in the map. Now, how did they do this? It was a tricky one. They used a money system. Take a look at that blue pane there at the bottom. Mercantilism is an economic money-making system where a mother country controls her colonies. And you're thinking, mother? There's a mother in this? Oh yes, there's a mother here. So looking at the picture here, I'm going to start putting some visuals to help us understand what is mercantilism and why is it a money system with a mother. Okay, so mercantilism is a mother system where a mother country controls her kids. The kids are the colonies. So mother in this case is England. Now she's going to control her workers. Those are her colonies. She's going to demand that those colonies, those workers, make her money. Now, how does she do this? Well, first, the kids have to work and produce raw materials. Do you see it highlighted there? Raw materials are things like lumber, wood, vegetables, cotton, even gold that you find in the ground. So all these things come from the earth. Now, those kids have to send that beautiful resource over to mother. Now, mother takes those resources, and what mother does is that she makes those resources into something more valuable. For instance, she'll take that wood and that lumber and she'll make a desk out of it, and then she'll be able to sell the desk. But here's the little tricky rub part. She's gonna sell it for double. So the raw material was cheap, but now the desk that she made is highly expensive. So if she takes that cotton and then she takes it and weaves it and makes a beautiful cloth out of it, Now mother can sell it for twice the profit. And what about the colonists? What about the workers? Do they get any of the money? Not really, no. The workers make less money in this system. So you can imagine that mother's kids were not happy about mother taking advantage of their work, their labor, and all the materials they were sending. And plus, she was taking a lot of their profits. Yeah, that's what this is about. It's all about making money. And everybody knows that mom picks our pockets sometimes. Am I right? So let's review. Can you identify the reasons that these big three European countries came to the New World? Can you tell the difference between their territory, their religion, or their wealth of motivations? Now, that's very basic knowledge. Now, if you wanted to take it up to an advanced level, can you connect how Columbus's travels led Europeans to run over to the New World? How did Columbus and his discovery open the door? And further, can you explain mercantilism as a money-making system? That's a tough one. Listen, kids, you've been awesome today. I hope you learned something new, YouTubers, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next video here with Mr. Lance Flipped U.S. History Classroom. Get your notes, get your answers. I'll see you in class, everybody, and if not, catch you on the YouTubes. All right? Peace.